Welcome back to the Shine Within podcast. As a holistic mental wellness coach, Carleigh Burns specializes in empowering high achievers to overcome anxiety and step into a life of confidence and self-love. With a unique blend of skills as a yoga teacher, Reiki and sound healer, and a wealth of travel and retreat leading experiences, Carleigh brings a holistic approach to mental wellness. A self-proclaimed mental warrior and super empath, that's clairsentient, Carleigh has triumphed over crippling anxiety and mastered living with bipolar disorder. Her mission is to guide others on their journey to naturally heal their minds, regain control of their lives, and cultivate self-love. Through her guidance, you can discover how to make your mind a superpower and transform your life just as she has successfully done. That's so awesome, Carleigh. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for being on my show today.
Thanks so much for having me, Gina. It's a pleasure.
Of course. And I just wanted to go ahead and first just start by you sharing your personal journey of healing from anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder.
Yeah, of course. So this is something I love to talk about because I feel it's not, a lot of times our society is not open enough about when we're facing darkness and what that actually looks like and feels like and how much that can take over our lives. So I grew up undiagnosed with anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. I experienced plans to take my own life when I was 12 years old. I experienced disordered eating and substance abuse from the age of 14 for years to come after that. And I really feel that my childhood and adolescence and the early years of my life were crippled by the fact that we were not aware of mental health. We were crippled by my own mind and my unknowing how to heal. So fast forward to when I was 19 and experienced my first and only episode of mania and received my diagnosis of bipolar disorder. My whole world shifted because I had gone from really fearing the capabilities of my mind. I was really afraid of this idea that I might have bipolar because my dad had me diagnosed 2 years before I did. And my association with what that disorder meant was someone who was very angry and had temper tantrums. And, my dad and I had a really negative relationship back then. So I did not want to associate, my own mind with what I witnessed in him. And when I experienced this diagnosis, it was like this aha moment of this doesn't change who I am. I'm still me, and it doesn't mean that I'm going to become someone who's angry and has temper tantrums and treats people in this way. I can choose how I move forward with this new knowledge of how my mind is working. So I immediately said, I don't want the medication, and went on a really deep dive of healing. So again, I was 19 at the time. I was in the middle of university, and what a profound time to have a transformation. There's so much going on in your life at that stage. I was just about to go down to New Zealand on exchange. I actually experienced my manic episode 2 days before my flight, which was very anxiety inducing because I still needed to pack and get my life together to go on exchange for a year. But it all worked out, and I got down there. I ended up adding psychology as a second major because I was studying biology at the time. That year, I also did my yoga teacher training. I started really prioritizing my sleep and nutrition patterns. I started immersing myself in the outdoors and fell in love with just facing my fears and making myself uncomfortable. And the transformation that I experienced in just 1 year was absolutely incredible. So from that point on, I was about 20 years old when I knew that my calling on this planet is to guide others towards naturally healing their minds as well, especially after having witnessed my dad go through his journey much later in life. He was in his late 50s, early 60s when he got diagnosed and started getting help, which did involve medication that he needs to take every day. Seeing that and seeing the contrast of my journey, having gone through it so much younger and now having my whole life to practice, I know that it's my calling to step up and serve my community and guide others towards this form of healing.
Wow. And so at 19, you decided that was the time that you were going to change your life completely. That's incredible. Mine was like what 30, like the late 30s. So good for you. I mean, honestly, that's amazing. I wish I was able to do that or had the strength to do that. Perhaps I did have the strength because I did it already a little bit
Yeah.
little bit later in life, but that's okay. But what would you say was your turning point in life that led you to go ahead and seek natural healing methods for your mental health?
So I think that there were quite a few. One turning point that really comes to mind is when I was 15, and this is when I was struggling with disordered eating. I was really stressed out about whatever normal things 15-year-old girls are stressed out about,
Yeah.
school and boys. And but on top of that, I was using cannabis, overusing cannabis as a way to numb my anxiety. I was really struggling with my body image and just always trying to be a little bit skinnier, even though I was already unhealthily thin. So I was going through all of this, and I went on a juice cleanse with my dad, actually down to Costa Rica. I was working at this amazing raw vegan cafe, and my boss, the owner of the cafe, was organizing this juice cleanse. So we got to go, which was just an amazing experience. And we all got, while we were there, like a one-on-one. It was supposed to be a nutritionist session with my boss, who was a nutritionist, but she asked about stress. And it was perhaps the first time in my life, because I had never been to a therapist or anything like that, the first time in my life that somebody really sat down with me, asked me, like, how are you doing? And I just broke down and was, beside myself, talking about all these things, my relationship with my dad and whoever I liked at school and whatever was going on for me. And the way that she held the space and the way that she really saw into me and made me feel worthy of her attention, of her love, of her time, was so pivotal for me, because I was like, wow, if you're taking the time to really tell me you care about me, I must be worth something. If someone else can see that, maybe I need to work on that for myself. So that was probably the first moment when I was like, okay, I need to start doing some self work, because it's not fun to hate yourself and feel horrible all the time. So that's where a journey started to kind of begin, that awareness started to kind of begin. But I think I've always been much more drawn to the natural ways of things, to the ancestral ways of doing things. I've never been a big fan of pharmaceuticals. And I think probably part of that was, working my first ever job, and I worked there all through high school, was at this raw vegan cafe where it was very natural focused. And we had a lot of naturopaths who would come in and eat that food, and getting to connect with that whole world of alternative healing and holistic healing really opened my eyes. And I've always known that medication wasn't something that I want to rely on. I don't want to have to take something every single day to feel okay, because I want to be able to just do that for myself.
Right. Yes, I had taken many medications before in my life and literally had to wean myself off of it because the doctors weren't going to wean it off for me. They're just like,
Mm-hmm.
here's another refill, refill, refill. I
Mm-hmm.
don't need that garbage in my body. And I think I was sharing this in and somebody we know mutually, our podcast, we were just talking about how they don't get to the root cause and of the
Right.
problem. They're just masking it like a band-aid. Just here, just take this to numb the pain for a little bit, but really what's really going on deep within us that we're just hurting, like I was hurting and I knew that the trazodone, was what is it called? Lexapro, all those medications were not
Mm-hmm.
good for me because I suffered from anxiety and I suffered probably from depression as well. And I had suicidal thoughts. I've attempted suicide before. So I was in a mental hospital for 3 days in an outpatient program for several weeks or whatever. And so I get it. And I just remember being in an outpatient program and everybody was like, oh, do you get not the doctors, the counselors were there. Well, did you take your medication?
Mm-hmm.
Did you take your medication? I was
Yeah.
like, medication, medication, medication. It's like, no. And it was proof right there when we were having a conversation. Someone had anxiety, and then one of the counselors was diverting her attention to a different conversation that she was engaging with her, saying, so tell me a little bit about the trip you're going to be going to, because she had anxiety. So she was a little bit nervous. And then she was just sharing. And then she noticed her anxiety then go away. I mean, that is automatically without medication. She did that on her
Mm-hmm.
own, with her own mind, thinking about something else. And so it's not like you needed that Ativan right away to like calm you down. She didn't take anything. It was just her
Yeah.
and her mind and herself. Just, her mind was shifted. So
Yeah, yeah, that's
I
amazing. And you touched on such a good point about, like, medication is like a band-aid, and I recognize that at certain times in people's lives, for certain people, that's absolutely necessary to keep them going, to keep them alive, but it's not going to fix the problem. You need to still look at, holistic view of your life and all these other things that are going on. And, you know, if you're not taking care of your body or getting enough sleep or nutrition or exercise, or you don't have great social connections, even taking that pill, you're not going to feel fulfilled and happy. You might feel a little bit less shitty, but you're not going
Yeah,
to necessarily feel good.
totally. Now, can you actually explain the concept of holistic healing in the context of mental health and why you believe that it's effective?
Absolutely. So to me, holistic healing essentially means that we're looking at the whole person. So the mind is not something that's just its own little piece of you. It's not separate from your body or your spirit. Your mind and body are so deeply interconnected. So when we look at healing the mind from a holistic standpoint, that also means healing the body. It also means healing our connection to spirit. And like a really tangible example of this is the fact that we have an entire nervous system inside of our gut. It's actually the spot where the majority of our serotonin and dopamine are produced. We need these chemicals, these molecules to feel good, to feel bliss, to feel contentment. And they're not actually made in our brains. They're made majority in our guts, in our intestines. So that right there is just proof of how interconnected the mind and body are. And you know, when we experience an emotion or yeah, any sort of feeling, there's a physiological component to that. There are literally like chemicals that move through your body, which is why when you feel anxious, your lungs, your breathing starts to increase, your heart rate increases. You might feel like almost pressure on your chest because there's physical changes happening in your body that you're also experiencing in your mind. So when we talk about healing holistically, it's not just looking at the one like brain chemistry piece, which is what medication is for. It's looking at how are you showing up in all areas of your life? You know, how is your gut health and how is that affecting your mind? And how are your relationships? And how's your relationship with yourself? How are you speaking to yourself inside of your head? And are you moving your body to get that endorphin boost that we get from exercise every day? And it's really breaking down all these components that are so interrelated with each other and so interrelated with our mental health.
Yes, and you definitely mentioned exercise and movement. Now, are there any other key practices or strategies you recommend for someone just starting their journey on mental or to what mental wellness?
So the first place that I always recommend starting is to learn to fall in love with yourself and choose to move forward with healing from a place of wanting to improve because you love yourself and not going on, you know, a healing journey that's kind of out of spite. You don't want to be doing this work if it's because you don't like where you are now and you want things to be different. It's like if you're trying to go to the gym, maybe to lose weight because you hate your body. You're not going to enjoy that process. You're not going to get those results very quickly because you're doing it with such a negative mindset. So ultimately, it really needs to start with accepting where you are and really making an effort to learn to fall in love with yourself, practice that compassion, and move forward from a place of genuinely wanting to heal because you know that you're worthy of healing.
Yeah, and how does one love themselves or practice loving themselves? I know for myself, I hated myself. I didn't like myself for so long. And I realized after I got sober from alcohol that and sought a mentor, she showed me things differently. And I was practicing certain things that helped me. Like there's that mirror meditation where then you're
Mm-hmm.
really talking to yourself. Or if you're doing things for yourself, like go and get a massage, pedicure, manicure. Yes, those are nice, but how are you talking to yourself during those times? Self-care is different in that way. So what do you think are some other strategies that we can use to start loving ourselves or practices?
Yeah, self-love is a journey. It takes
Yeah,
a long time
it
to
does.
practice, and it's a continual practice as well that,
Right.
you know, goes on throughout our lives. Something that I find really powerful is to think about the people around you who you love and who you feel inspired by and who you look at and think, wow, I think they're so cool, and you know, I'd like to be more like them. And flip those thoughts onto yourself, because 9 times out of 10, especially if it's someone who you're close with, one of your good friends, when you're looking at them and saying, wow, they're such an amazing human, they're looking at you and thinking the exact same things. And when we can start to actively voice this, you know, like tell that person that you think they're amazing and see what happens, because a lot of the time they're going to reciprocate that and you're going to be able to see yourself from a different perspective. And even if you don't feel comfortable voicing that, just thinking about how other people are actually seeing you. And this can be tricky as well, because a lot of the times we place so many judgments on ourselves, and we assume that other people are looking at us with a negative lens, but vast majority of the time that's not the case at all. So taking more of an objective stance when someone does something for you, thinking about how they must actually feel about you, care about you, the influence that you're having in their life, because every single moment that you've ever been a part of, whether you smiled at someone walking down the street, or you complimented the grocery clerk on their hair, or you had a really deep, meaningful relationship with someone, every single interaction would have been different if you weren't there. So just recognizing your significance, and even if that's where it starts, and then you start to notice the ways that you're positively influencing other people, turning that around on yourself and recognizing that you're worthy of love.
Yes, and you are worthy of love.
Mm,
Now,
absolutely.
there's this one practice I always told my clients, like, hey, if it's in your mind that you find something attractive on even a woman or whatever, if they have like beautiful earrings,
Mm,
their hair is done, just say it to them. Like, if it's in your head,
uh,
something positive, say it. Why not? What are you gonna lose? And then I
yeah,
tell them also, if you're going to if someone's giving you a compliment, don't try to say, like, oh, and you did it too. You just say thank you. And
yeah,
then
accept
really
it.
accept it and hold it in dear to your heart, because that's what people are missing. They're afraid to communicate these things. Like,
Mhm.
I'm always complimenting everybody because I feel it in my heart. If I didn't like what they're wearing, then I won't say anything. But
Yeah.
I mean, if I did, I'm going to say something like, hey, that actually looks really nice on you. That's very flattering. And people smile, and then the joy that they have, they feel good. And it's like a domino effect. Once they feel good, then they pass
Yeah.
it on to everybody else, and they start feeling good, and everyone else will start feeling good. And that's the
And you know
goal.
what's cool? Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. And you know what's cool is that when someone does something nice for someone else, whether it's a compliment or giving a gift or whatever that is, not only does the person who's receiving it feel good, the person who's giving it feels good. And anyone who witnesses that also experiences those good feelings, which is so beautiful, because you're really having a positive impact on everyone that's in that interaction, even if they're not directly a part of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, in your coaching, can you actually share a success story where you actually helped a client and they're now just living life and they're loving themselves so much and they're just like, yes, thank you so much, Carleigh, for your help.
Yeah, so I have this really amazing client who's finished my program. And when we first started working together, she never took any time for herself. She's a mom, so very much, focused on the kids, as, pretty much most mothers are, but just never really putting any thought into, what she was eating or her sleep routine or any sort of movement or doing anything for herself. It was always just really focused on the kids. And not long after we started working together, she actually started going to church as something that was, her time that she's setting aside to do something good for herself. So through that, she's developing community, and she started to bring in walks every single day. Started to, clean up her eating and really tune into what her cycle is asking for. Intuitive eating along with her cycle, which is something that I work with people with as well. Um, and now it's to the point where she can like drop the kids off at the neighbor's house and go and actually take time for herself and go and do whatever it is that she needs to do, whether that's like yoga or meditation, which was never part of her life before, or it's, focusing on making sure that the meals are planned out for the week so she doesn't have to scramble the day of. And it's all of these little things, because ultimately this form of healing is all about building a lifestyle that's fully conducive to healing. And she's just, she really took it and ran with it, and just it's so amazing to see where she's at now. And she told me so many times, like, this is the best thing I could have done for myself. Thank you so much. So it's really beautiful to witness those kinds of transformations, even when on the day-to-day it's small, but overall, having a look back at her life from then to now, it is a transformation.
That's so beautiful. I love seeing people transform and then just seeing them shine. It's like you see them when they first come in and start talking to you. They're probably feeling down. They're looking down. They're not really smiling too much. But then you see them at the end and they're at the end of their program and they're just like, completely different, and they're just so
Yeah.
happy and so overjoyed, and oh, this is such a good feeling helping others. I love. So thank you for what you do though, seriously, because I think it's very important that we have more of the holistic approach, especially with mental health, because like I said, I suffered from anxiety before,
Mhm.
had to take medication. Medication didn't do anything, made me gain weight. I was even hating myself even more because I was gaining weight. And one lady told me in that outpatient program, because we asked, like, how come on these medications for depression or sometimes anxiety, we gain weight? And she's like, well, it's because you're happier. You like to eat more.
What?
Can you believe that? I will never forget that. I'm like, are you serious? Thinking back, I'm like, oh my goodness. No.
She's like, I don't have an answer for this one. How can I spin this in a positive way?
Because we're eating more because we're happier. Okay.
Oh,
But
good, so
I
funny.
know, right? Speaking of eating, I wanted, because you mentioned intuitive eating. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because this is like the second time I've heard about intuitive eating, and I'm so fascinated by that.
Absolutely. So diet culture in our modern culture is, it can be so toxic. It can be so restrictive. It's like, I can only eat what's on my like diet plan today. And then people end up feeling really guilty if they're trying not to have bread and they have a sandwich, and then they start, feeling really down on themselves and feeling like they've failed. So intuitive eating is more about really tuning into what is it that your body is asking for. And also kind of differentiating between like, if I want pizza every single day, that's probably not what my body actually needs. But taking that one step deeper, if I'm craving pizza, maybe it's cheese that I'm craving. Maybe that's because, there's a lot of tryptophan in cheese, which is actually what our body needs to create serotonin. Where else can I get tryptophan? Well, I can get it from turkey. I can get it from chocolate. There's these other places where these things exist. So that's kind of one aspect if you're really diving into trying to switch up your eating patterns. But what I am really focused on is intuitively eating with my cycle. So when you start to tune into your infradian rhythm as a woman, that's our menstrual cycle that we go through every single month, when you're in the menstruating years anyways. And we actually need different foods throughout the month. It's like we go through 4 seasons every month. So, there are certain times in your cycle where you might be like, wow, I really want berries and I want salads and I want all these light things. And it's listening to your body instead of being like, that's weird that I want, a salad in the middle of winter. Like, why would I want that? But in your body, it's actually summertime for that short amount of time that you're ovulating. So listen to your body and give yourself that, because that food is what's going to fuel exactly what you need right now. And, it's not feeling bad if some days you eat more because you're in your pre-menstrual phase and you need more denser foods, darker red meats, and lentils and pumpkin and rich things, because it's your winter, and it's okay if you need to eat more and rest more in those days because your body's in sort of like a hibernation. So it's about, being aware of these things and then starting to really tune into and listen to what your body needs.
Yes, and that's exactly what I've been doing in recent years too. I've been actually listening to more of my body. If I'm not hungry, I'm not going to eat, because we were conditioned to eat at a certain time for breakfast,
Yeah.
lunch, and dinner. That's not the case. Like, I'm starting to say, hey, if I'm not hungry for breakfast, I'm not going to eat. Why? Because it's the time to eat. No. And then I actually was craving grapes for some reason, because I don't even like grapes that much, but my husband had bought some grapes, and they gave us the wrong ones. So we get our groceries delivered to us, and then they
Mhm.
got us, instead of the purple grapes, they were the green grapes, which were sour. But I was tasting them, and I'm like, these are actually really good. They were not sour, and I enjoyed them. And I was like, maybe I should eat more grapes, and so I did.
Yeah, beautiful. And that's
Yeah.
exactly right. Like doing anything just because society has conditioned us to do that thing is just not serving us.
Right.
It's goes beyond intuitive eating and just tuning into the natural cycles around us, waking with the sun and going to bed when it's dark. And as humans, we're mammals. And in the summer, we don't need as much sleep as we do in the winter. And these things flow and change with the seasons, and just as our bodies do. So it's ultimately, we can call it intuitive eating, but it's ultimately just tuning back into nature and, tuning into the nature within us and giving ourselves what we really need, no matter what that is in that moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, what advice would you give to somebody who's currently struggling with mental health issues and they're unaware about where to start in their healing journey?
That's such a great question. Just being aware that you are absolutely capable of healing. You are so worthy of your own self-love, just as you are loved by people around you. And that it's, even though it's hard, it is so, so worth it to do the work that it takes to really heal your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when you work with your clients, do you actually do Reiki on them and then do you do the sound bath healing as well?
Not generally. That's more so Reiki is something that I use mainly for personal use. If I was meeting a client in person, absolutely. But I don't really do distance healings. I just prefer the in-person physical feeling of the Reiki. And sound is something I more so do when I'm holding like a cacao ceremony workshop, that kind of thing, which again is kind of like a generally an in-person thing. With my clients, it's generally more so I have a like 4-month program, like I mentioned, called the 8 Simple Steps to Naturally Heal Anxiety. So there's videos and modules and like worksheets, reflections, and yoga and meditation classes. So people work through the videos kind of on their own time. And then we have a coaching session and discuss what's going on, how we can tweak things, how we can actually implement these learnings into their life. And then the work really happens when we leave our session and they go and actually implement those things and start to shift their lifestyle towards that. So yeah, I don't do a whole lot of the Reiki or sound because I predominantly work online.
Yes, and I was going to say, what was I going to say? I had a thought in my head and now I forgot it. It was related to it'll come back to me. It'll come back to me.
If it's
But
important.
I know it was something cute that I wanted to say too, and I forgot. Um, but what are your actual thoughts on like future mental health treatment and the role of like holistic practices in it?
Well, it's absolutely only growing. I think more and more people are waking up and realizing, even people who are on medication saying, okay, well, I've been on this medication for years and I'm still not feeling well. So this obviously wasn't the answer. Or people that are, trialing 10 different kinds of medication to try and get it right. And, the psychiatrist is like, oh, we should try this next thing, and maybe that will be the fix. And people are starting to wake up and be like, actually, maybe this isn't what I need. So there's such a rise in holistic healing, and there's such a rise in self-development as well. And all of this just really plays into each other. There's also a rise in, reconnecting with nature and tuning back into ancestral skills. And all of these things are a part of the collective healing that, as a planet we're currently going through, because it's so essential at this time. We're at a really pivotal point in history, I think, where we're either going to keep going on the way we've been going and it's not going to look very good, or people will continue waking up and start to holistically heal, not only for themselves, but for the greater world as a whole. So I think it's really only growing. We're still in the beginning stages of where this style of holistic healing is going to go.
And I cannot wait for that day. And that's the thing that's why I love doing podcasts is because I'll get guests like yourself and other ones that just wanted to share exactly what you're talking about. Natural
Mhm.
ways of healing, no medicine, the conditioning, get rid of the TV, all these things that we need to tune into our spirit as well. I think the spirit
Mhm.
aspect is very important. And once you really start to trust yourself, know yourself, love yourself, you will see magic happen. You will absolutely see magic happen. And so thank you again for what you do. It's just, I know for my journey, it's been amazing having a mentor help me with my mindset, and then of course she was a fitness trainer, so we exercise together, but she's also does
Yeah.
yoga. And I was doing those yoga movements. Right now, I'm really focusing on my hips and my lower back and getting that because I've always suffered like lower back pain. And I think it's from either the epidural from my first child or multiple car accidents. I'm not sure. And even then, like I was thinking
Confirmation.
about it just right now, yeah, like even giving birth, like we're given all this medication. Like I almost lost my second child because they induced me because they thought he had just I had gestational diabetes and they wanted to deliver him earlier than his due date because they thought his head was going to get big. But once they put whatever that hormone inside me, I started hemorrhaging and I almost died. Both of us almost died. And so I don't know what they're putting in. It's not safe. And so I was thinking, wow, I should have just gone the natural way back then. I was thinking about, man, these medicines are brutal. Like I've taken so many different kinds and nothing has helped me. I really had to go within, well, first off, get sober, go within, find a
Yeah.
mentor, and then really work on my healing journey,
Mhm.
self-love, like I said, and then also just learning more about who I am as a spiritual being, who
Yeah.
everybody else is as a spiritual being, because we're all one, like you said, it's all of that collective consciousness that we have. And then we are going through a shift on earth here. And I just
Mhm.
cannot wait for the day where it's like a new earth, you know.
Yeah.
I cannot wait. I know we're in the early
Me
stages,
neither.
but that's why we just want to share so much knowledge to everybody and get it out there to the public that, hey, the world needs you. When they need,
Absolutely.
yeah. And so again, yeah. So for our listeners, where can they find you, or if they want to work with you, where is your website?
Yeah, so my business name is Manas Mastery, Manas Mastery. So my website is just manasmastery.com. I have a free guide you can download that is essentially the first step towards overcoming anxiety, which touches on, you mentioned the mirror meditation. That's one of my exercises that's listed on there as well. And my Instagram is manas.mastery. So those are probably the best places to reach me, is my website and my Instagram.
Awesome. And those will also be in the show notes. But any last words or thoughts you'd like to share?
I think just reiterating on, what we've been talking about this whole time, that you are so worthy of healing and it is possible. It's not always easy and it's not always pretty and it's not always fun. It can be hard work, but it is so, so worth it to put in the effort on your healing journey to come out the other side as an empowered and fulfilled and happy individual.
Absolutely. And now what I was going to say to you earlier came back to me, and it was about taking action.
Mm,
Taking action is so important. Yes, we can be telling you things and guiding you, but it's up to you to do the work.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
yeah, I was going to mention that taking action, like you mentioned, they have to implement the steps and the strategies and the tools that you are providing them.
yeah.
And just doing that, they're going to see their life change completely. Oh, well,
100%. Yeah.
thank you so much, Carleigh. It's been a pleasure having you on my show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Of course.